A cold autumn rain patters on the asphalt and car roofs, turning the streetlights into long, blurry blurs. Minju stands under a wide black umbrella held by one of his men. He glances at his watch. His assistant, Kang, is 7 minutes late. This irritates Minju. He doesn't like it when plans fall apart. The neighborhood is usually deserted at this time of day, but right now it seems especially deserted and gray because of the rain. Two other men in dark coats stand a little further away, watching the street. They are silent and motionless. The air smells of wet concrete and dampness. Minju adjusts the cuff of his expensive but formal coat. He's already thinking about the conversation he's about to have with Kang. Suddenly, his gaze catches movement at the end of the alley. It's not Kang. It's a small figure. She appears from around the corner and walks along the sidewalk, oblivious to the rain. Minju doesn't pay attention at first. A passerby, but the figure approaches their group. It's a girl. The girl is small, perhaps 6 or 7 years old. She's wearing a bright pink jacket with the hood unzipped, and her dark hair is pulled back into a bun of small braids, many of which have already come undone from the moisture. Her dark skin is glistening with raindrops. She's clearly wet. Minju looks at her with slight bewilderment. His men immediately tense. One of them takes an almost imperceptible step forward to block their path. But the girl doesn't stop. She carefully steps around the man, as if he were just a pillar in her path. Her large brown eyes don't look anywhere. They are fixed on Minju. She comes so close that she stops right in front of him within reach. The rain is pouring down on both her and him now, but she doesn't care. She looks up, her face serious and focused. There's not a drop of the fear in her gaze that Minju is used to seeing in people's eyes. There's only determination and something else he can't immediately identify. The tension around her thickens. The men freeze, ready to intervene at any moment. But the girl seems simply not to notice them. Her whole world now is this tall stranger with an inscrutable face. Mia silently rummages through the pocket of her pink jacket. Her small fingers search for something. She takes her time. Finally, she pulls out a crumpled dollar bill. The bill has clearly been through many hands. It's folded several times into a small, worn square. The girl carefully unfolds the square in her wet palm, carefully smoothing it out with her fingers. The paper is wet around the edges. She looks at it again. Minju, and then hands him the bill. Her hand doesn't shake. The wet $1 bill lies in her open palm like the most precious treasure. Minju looks at the dollar bill, then at the girl. His brain slowly processes the image. No one, absolutely no one, has offered him money like this in the last 15 years, and certainly not just $1. It's so absurd that he doesn't even feel insulted, only utter bewilderment. He slowly lowers his gaze to the outstretched hand. Her nails are neatly trimmed, a small felt-tip flower drawn on her wrist. She continues to hold the dollar bill, her hand not moving. Rain patters on the umbrella above his head, but drops are now falling on the crumpled green rectangle in her hand. "Mister?" the girl says. Her voice is clear and ringing, audible even over the rain. "This is all I have." She takes a small step closer, raising her hand with the dollar higher. "I need help," she continues very seriously. "Please." Minju is silent. He's waiting for her to ask for food, or to be taken home, or whatever else children on the street ask for. He nods, letting her continue. It's not permission, just a signal that he's listening. The girl takes a deep breath, as if gathering strength for a very important statement. "Oh, my puppy is lost. His name is Cloud. He's like this." She points with her free hand just above her knees. "And he's brown, with a white spot here." She touches her cheek with her fingers. "He's very afraid of thunderstorms. And there's a thunderstorm today. He might have hidden. I looked for him all day, but I couldn't find him. He must have been really scared." She hands him the dollar again, her voice a little quieter, but even more insistent. "Can you help me find him? Please? I'll pay you." It's for the work. Ju's men. The sound seems to vanish. They look from the girl to their boss. Their faces are completely expressionless, but their eyes are filled with utter astonishment. They were prepared for anything. An attack, a strange transmission, threats, but not this. For the missing puppy named Cloud. Minju looks at the dollar bill. He looks at the girl's serious, hopeful face, dripping with raindrops. He doesn't say a word. His entire minute-by-minute evening, his important conversation with Kang, all his errands, it all suddenly loses all meaning in the midst of this small, wet figure and her unimaginable request. The space around them narrows to the sidewalk beneath a black umbrella, where a grown man, feared by everyone, listens to a child ask him to find his dog. After these words, complete silence falls. Or rather, only the rain can be heard, its monotonous sound on the pavement, on the rooftops, on the fabric of the umbrella. But inside the circle under the umbrella, the sound seems to vanish. Minju's men don't move. They don't even turn their heads. It's something from a world that doesn't exist for them. Their faces are stony masks, but their frozen postures convey readiness. One of them, the one standing closest, shifts his weight slightly onto his front leg. It's an almost invisible movement. He's ready to push the child aside in a second if a command is given, or if the girl takes another false step. They don't look at Mia with disdain. They simply wait for this interruption, this strange misunderstanding, to disappear. Their entire world has frozen, awaiting a familiar, clear reaction. Minju doesn't look at his men. He looks only at the girl. He tilts his head, his gaze becoming intense. He's used to seeing many things in people's eyes: fear, flattery, hatred, greed, calculation. Sometimes, desperate courage that still borders on fear. He can read these nuances in a split second. There's none of that in this girl's eyes. Nothing familiar. Brown eyes, large, with long, wet lashes, look at him without a shadow of a doubt. There's worry in them. Yes, clear worry for the one she loves. There's weariness from the long search. There's determination to see it through. But most importantly, there's absolute, crystal-clear hope in them. She doesn't hope he won't touch her. She doesn't hope to get something for nothing. She hopes he will help. She doesn't see him as a threat or as some kind of important person. She sees him as a potential savior. This hope ignores his entire reputation, all the rules of his world. It appeals to something more basic, something Minju hasn't thought about in a long time. It's a look that doesn't ask, but trusts. And that's its strange power. The silence lasts for several long seconds. Min-ju feels his men's gazes boring into him. He senses a heavy silence, broken only by the patter of rain. The small hand holding the wet dollar bill remains outstretched before him. He slowly, almost casually, places his hand in his coat pocket. His movements are smooth and precise. He takes out a leather glove and slips it onto his right hand. It's a simple, familiar gesture, but in this situation, it seems strangely ceremonial. Then he extends that gloved hand. His fingers carefully, almost tenderly, take the soggy dollar bill from Mia's outstretched palm. The paper is soft and cold. He doesn't look at the bill. His gaze remains fixed on the girl's face. He folds the dollar bill in half without looking and slips it into the inside pocket of his coat. The action is unhurried, deliberate. It's not pity. It's not impulse. It's a decision made after a cold, instant analysis. The analysis led him to a simple conclusion. He accepts this contract, the strangest he's ever had. Only then does he nod. One short, clear nod of his head in Mia's direction. It's not a warm gesture. It's a businesslike gesture, a sign that the terms have been accepted, and the work begins. "Cloud," he finally says. His voice is low, even, without any particular intonation. He's simply confirming the name of the object of their search. A brown puppy with a spot. He turns to his frozen men, who are watching his every move. Their stony faces now express a slight, barely perceptible confusion. They saw him take the dollar. They saw the nod. They heard him say the dog's name, but their minds still refuse to piece these elements together into a coherent picture. Minju looks at them, and his gaze once again becomes its usual hard and emotionless. He gives them a new, unexpected order, one that sounds as mundane as an order to check a bill or change the meeting place. Ju's words hang in the air. People don't react right away. A second passes, then another. Their brains are still processing the order. Find the dog. A small brown dog with a white spot, named Cloud. This is not a mistake. The boss is not joking. He has already turned back to the girl. The one standing closest, named Khan, is the first to recover. He coughs almost imperceptibly into his fist, as if clearing his throat of surprise. His face becomes blank and submissive once more. He takes a step back and turns to the other two. He looks at them, conveying the order wordlessly. The command is read in his eyes. "You heard. Do it." The other two nod slowly, almost in sync. One of them, a young man named Taeyong, glances involuntarily at the drenched girl, then at his boss. A flicker of genuine confusion flashes in his eyes, which he immediately hides by lowering his gaze. He takes his phone out of his pocket but freezes, unsure of who to call or what to say. "Come, we need help finding a puppy?" That wasn't in their instructions. Han, seeing the hesitation, makes a brief gesture with his hand. He clearly divides the zones. One is to search the alley on the left, the other on the right. He remains close to Min-Ju, maintaining his distance, but his usual vigilance is now mingled with slight confusion. He doesn't watch for potential threats from windows or cars, but looks at his feet, under parked cars, into the dark crevices between buildings. His professional gaze, trained to spot danger and suspicious movement, now mindlessly glides over puddles and trash bags, searching for traces of a small animal. He carries out the order flawlessly, but inside, everything has turned upside down. Mia watches the men's movements. As they begin to disperse, looking around, understanding dawns on her face. They really are helping. She turns to Min-Ju. Her serious expression gives way to a flash of new hope. She doesn't think about etiquette or distance. For her, he's not a frightening stranger, but a person who's agreed to help. She's simply doing what she does with a grandmother or a kind neighbor. She extends her small, slightly dirty hand and takes his gloved one. Her fingers barely wrap around two of his. Her hand is cold and damp from the rain. "I'll show you where I last saw him," she says confidently, and begins to lead him. "He was walking right here by the fruit store." Min-Ju looks at his hand, now held by the child. It's so unexpected that he doesn't even think about pulling it away. Her grip is weak, but very determined. He takes a step, then another, letting her lead. His large black umbrella is now tilted to cover her as she walks beside him. Han follows 2 steps behind them, his face a mask of complete professional detachment, though inside, he's a veritable hurricane. They walk along the wet sidewalk. Min-Ju knows this neighborhood like the back of his hand. He knows every sign, every entrance, every turn that leads to backyards. He knows it in terms of control, territory, points of income, and vulnerabilities. Now he sees it completely differently. Mia leads him past a grocery store, and he notices a broken crate of rotten apples standing by the entrance. Before, he saw only a counter and the owner, with whom he had a clear agreement. Now he sees a possible hiding place for a frightened puppy. They pass trash cans against the wall. Usually, they're just a backdrop, a feature of the street. Now he sees that the door of one of the cans has fallen off, and it's dark inside and probably smells of food. A potential refuge. She points to a narrow gap between 2 houses, littered with old cardboard. "He used to run in there sometimes when he was playing," she explains. Min-Ju looks at this dirty, dark gap. Before, he saw it only as a fire hazard and tenants breaking the rules. Now he sees a labyrinth where a small creature might hide. He sees a high curb that's difficult for a child to climb over. He sees a deep puddle by the drain, which now feels like a lake for a tiny animal. The neighborhood ceases to be a pattern. It becomes a large, daunting, and challenging place to find something small and precious. As they walk, Mia doesn't remain silent. She's overwhelmed with emotion, and now that she has a helper, she needs to tell everyone everything. "I found him about a month ago," she begins, not letting go of his hand and looking carefully at his feet. "He was sitting under this bench at the entrance to the park, all wet and shivering. He was very small, smaller than he is now." She speaks simply, without drama. "I brought him home in my pocket. At first, Grandma said I couldn't, but he was so quiet, and he looked so pitiful. I gave him some of my milk from the carton. He drank it so quickly." She pauses for a second, remembering. "Then he got a little sick. He was sneezing. Grandma said we should take him back, but I couldn't. I wrapped him in my old scarf and kept him next to the radiator. Every few hours, I gave him warm water from a dropper. I named him Cloud because he was gray-brown, like an autumn cloud before rain." She looks at Min-Ju, checking if he's listening. "He recovered in 3 days, and he started playing. He loves chasing the sunbeam from the window and sleeping on my feet when I'm doing homework. He doesn't like loud noises. Cars, shouting, and thunderstorms. He hides right away." Her voice turns guilty. "I went out with him for a little while today, before the rain. I wanted him to run around, and then thunder struck right overhead. I didn't even see him or where he went. He just disappeared. I thought he'd gone home, but he wasn't there." She squeezes his fingers tighter. "He probably thinks I abandoned him." The scene on the street becomes increasingly unusual. 3 respectable men in perfectly tailored dark suits and expensive coats are now engaged in an activity that completely belies their appearance. Khan, the oldest of them, methodically checks the row of trash bins against the wall of the store. He doesn't just glance. He squats, a difficult feat in his tight suit, and peers into the narrow gap between the wall and the bins. He uses a small but powerful flashlight, usually used for other purposes. The beam of light picks out empty bottles, soggy cardboard. Nothing. Taeyong, a young man, is exploring the opposite side. He's carefully pushing aside a pile of wet leaves that has accumulated near the drain with a long stick he found nearby. His face expresses extreme concentration, as if he's searching not for a puppy but for evidence of immense importance. He even tries to whistle cautiously, hesitantly and quietly, imitating, as he thinks, the call of a dog. The third man, named L, is checking all possible hiding places under parked cars. He drops to one knee, ignoring the puddle, and peers under the car. Drops of rain fall on his back, but he seems oblivious. His professional composure is now focused on finding the small brown ball of fur. They move slowly, carefully. No one is in a hurry, no one seems embarrassed. An order is an order, but the very absurdity of the situation hangs in the air. These people, accustomed to quiet conversations in expensive cars and quick, decisive actions, are now crawling along the wet asphalt, peering into every dark hole. Such a sight cannot go unnoticed. Faces begin to appear in the windows of the surrounding houses. First one, then another. A curtain opens in a second-story window of an old brick building. An elderly woman peers out. She looks down at the group of people below, her expression one of utter bewilderment. She sees Minju, whom she perhaps recognizes, or simply senses his importance. And she sees his men rummaging through the trash cans. She slowly shakes her head and steps away from the window. Across the street, in the doorway of a small fabric shop, the owner stands frozen. He holds a skein of thread and stands motionless, watching the scene unfold. His eyes are wide open. He whispers something to his wife, who stands nearby. She peers over his shoulder, covering her mouth with her hand. A young man emerges from the building's entrance, his dog on a leash. He sees a man in an expensive coat, Khan, who is now carefully examining the bushes beneath his window. The man stops dead in his tracks. His dog begins barking. Khan turns his head, his gaze briefly meeting the man's. The man quickly turns away, pretends to adjust the leash, and hurries away, pulling the dog with him. People don't go outside. They watch from hiding places, from behind curtains. They whisper. For them, this scene defies logic. These people inspire respect and fear. And now they're looking for a dog. The silence of the rainy evening is broken not by the usual sharp sounds, but by cautious footsteps, rustling in the bushes, and the quiet, businesslike conversations of men among themselves. It's clear here. There's nothing on this side. More than half an hour passes. The rain doesn't stop. It's getting dark, and the gray light becomes even dim. The search is still fruitless. Mia moves from one man to the next, peering over their shoulders. But each time her shoulders sag slightly. Suddenly, Taeyong, who had been searching the far end of the alley by the old wooden fence, lets out a short, subdued sound. He doesn't scream. He simply turns and looks for Han. "Hansai," he says quietly, but so that he can be heard. "Look." Han quickly approaches him. Minju, holding the umbrella over Mia, also turns his head. He doesn't move himself, but his attention is completely focused on them. Taeyong points the flashlight at the top of an old, slightly slanted fence. A small clump of fur is caught on the very corner of one of the rough, unplaned boards. It's dark brown, almost black from the dampness, but nearby, on the lighter wood, there's another stain, a small, mud-like one, resembling a paw print. Taeyong doesn't touch the fur. He simply shines the light on it. Han bends down and examines it. He uses his flashlight again. "Fresh," Khan says curtly, referring to the mud stain. "It could have been blown over by the wind, or jumped over here. The fence isn't high on that side." Mia, unable to bear it any longer, pulls her hand away and runs towards them. She stands on tiptoes, trying to see. "Is it him? Is this his fur?" Her voice trembled with excitement. Twilight quickly deepens into true darkness. Streetlights flicker on, casting long, shimmering reflections onto the wet asphalt. The search continues by artificial light. Flashlight beams dart across dark corners, basement windows, and the black recesses of alleyways. Min Ju stands under his umbrella, now illuminated from below by the yellow light of a street lamp. He's long since pulled out his phone. Several missed calls and messages are visible on the screen. He glances at them briefly, then dials a number. He speaks quickly and quietly, so as not to be overheard by Mia, who is now looking hopefully at a tuft of wool on the fence. "The meeting is cancelled. Reschedule everything for tomorrow." "Yes, that's it." "No, there will be no explanation." He pockets his phone. His evening, which should have ended in a quiet, austere office with an important conversation, is now spent on the cold, windswept street. He looks at his team. Their suits are soaked, their boots are dirty, they are tired. But no one stops. The order still stands. Minju beckons Han over. He comes over. We need more light and people, Minju says evenly, as if discussing expanding his sphere of influence. Light up this and the neighboring courtyards. Interview everyone who lives in the houses on this side of the fence. Quietly, without unnecessary noise. Khan nods. He's already pulling out his phone to carry out the order. The logistics of this unusual mission are already forming in his head. Minju turns to Mia. The girl stands with her fists clenched, staring into the darkness beyond the fence, as if trying to spot her pet. She, too, is completely wet and probably very hungry. The search continues, he tells her simply, without emotion. But there's a clear commitment in those words. He took the dollar. The job isn't over. Minju watches as Mia tries to suppress a shudder. Her small shoulders tremble, her lips slightly blue. He glances at his watch. The search in the dark continues, but leaving the child out in the cold can't continue. He makes a quick decision. Again, it's business, not emotion. A worker can't function effectively if he's cold. Let's go, he says to Mia, not expecting an answer. He nods briefly, indicating that Han should continue coordinating on-site, and heads for the nearest intersection. He leads her a short distance, just a couple of streets away, to a small, inconspicuous establishment. It's not a chain coffee shop, but a quiet place with tinted windows and a simple sign. Inside, it's warm and dry. The air smells of freshly ground coffee, sweet pastries, and wood. Behind the counter stands an elderly man, whose expression changes slightly when he sees Minju, and he nods almost imperceptibly. Minju chooses a table in the corner, away from the window. He takes off his wet coat and hangs it on a chair. Mia stands in the middle of the room, looking around. She leaves small wet footprints on the floor from her shoes. Sit, Minju says, gesturing to the chair opposite. He sits down himself, his posture straight and collected. Even here, he catches the owner's eye and makes a simple two-finger gesture. Then he looks at Mia. Coco? He asks. His tone is even, as if he were clarifying the details of a report. Mia nods, a little confused. She climbs onto a high chair, her feet barely reaching the floor. She places her hands on the countertop, still shaking slightly. A few minutes later, the host brings 2 cups on a tray. One is plain black coffee for Minju. The other is a large ceramic mug of steaming cocoa, topped with 2 marshmallows. The host places the cups in front of them and, just as silently, leaves. Mia carefully cups the warm mug in her hands. She blows on the dark surface of the drink, then takes a small sip. A look of deep, almost blissful relief crosses her face. She closes her eyes for a second, warming from within. Minju drinks his coffee. He takes his time. He watches the color gradually return to the girl's cheeks, the trembling in her hands subside. The silence in the cafe doesn't seem awkward to him. It's simply a pause. Have you been looking for him alone for a long time? He asks finally, not out of politeness, but to gather information, to assess the extent of the area they've already searched. Mia nods, holding the mug to her face. Since lunchtime, I ran all over our neighborhood, asked people. One woman said she saw a little dog running toward the old garages, but there was no one there. Then it started raining, and everyone hid inside. There was no one left to ask. She takes another sip of cocoa. She speaks more freely now, the warmth and sweet drink loosening her tongue. Grandma doesn't know I'm still looking. She thinks I'm doing homework at a friend's. She'll worry if I come home late. She's already tired after work. What does your grandmother do? Minju asks the next question. Everything remains calm. She sews. She alters and mends clothes. We have a lot of fabric and thread at home. Sometimes things come from the store where she used to work as a cutter. Mia says this simply, as if it were something self-evident. She's not complaining. She's simply stating a fact. What about your parents? He asks, and immediately sees her gaze drop to her mug. She's silent for a few seconds. Mom went far away, to another job. I don't have a dad, she says quietly but clearly. Then she adds, as if protecting her family from possible pity. But Grandma and I are doing well. She teaches me everything. And now we have Cloud. Minju listens. He doesn't sympathize. He simply accepts the data. The girl, the grandmother, a seamstress, the absence of parents. A puppy found on the street, like the greatest treasure. The picture emerges, clear and concise. He takes another sip of coffee. His world, composed of complex schemes, negotiations, and constant calculations, collides with this simple, fragile universe, held together by the love of a dog and the warmth of a cup of cocoa. Mia is finishing her second marshmallow when Minju's phone, lying on the table, quietly vibrates. The screen lights up. The name Han is on it. Minju picks up the phone. He doesn't move away. He just holds it to his ear. Speak! He listens without saying a word. His face doesn't change. Mia freezes, watching his eyes. She tries to decipher something from his gaze, but it's impenetrable. Where exactly? Minju asks. He listens, then nods, though his interlocutor can't see. Okay, don't touch anything. We're leaving. He places the phone on the table. His movements are still measured. He looks at Mia. Her eyes are huge, full of questioning and renewed, burning hope. One of my men found a possible location, he says without preamble. A caretaker at the motor pool behind the old garages. He heard a quiet whining sound coming from his shed this evening, where he keeps old tools. When he approached, the sound stopped. He didn't bother checking, afraid it might be rats. But now, having received our information, he remembered and called. Mia slides off the chair. She no longer feels tired or cold. It's him! It has to be him! It's quiet there, and there's no thunder! Her voice rings out. Minju stands up. He takes a few bills from his coat's inside pocket and places them under his empty cup. He puts on his coat. Let's go check it out, he says. And it sounds like a final verdict. The contract is nearing completion. Ju's car, dark and quiet, stops at a fence made of rusty corrugated metal. This is the backyard of an old, long-defunct motor pool. A cold rain falls. Han waits for them next to an elderly guard in a worn jacket. The guard nervously crumples his cap in his hands. In that shed over there, he says, pointing to a low wooden structure with a slanted door. I heard whining during the day, but I didn't go in there. You never know. Han has already surveyed the perimeter. He reports briefly to Minju. No fresh tracks. There's only one entrance. Mia jumps out of the car without waiting for the door to open. She runs to the barn, her voice ringing in the damp air. Cloud! I'm here! Silence answered. Only the sound of rain on the tin roof. Khan goes first. He pushes the creaky door. Inside, it smells of dust, old wood, and damp. The beam of his flashlight picks out piles of junk. Old tires, boxes of rusty tools, rolled-up rugs. In the far corner, under a small window, stands a dog kennel. It was once blue, but the paint has long since peeled. An empty plastic bowl lies in front of it. Mia squeezes forward and peers inside the kennel. It's empty. A crumpled piece of tarpaulin lies on the bottom, dry and cold. No warm lump, no sign that anyone had been here recently. Minju looks around the barn. His gaze skims the floor. The dust on the concrete lies in an even, untouched layer. Mia doesn't give up. She walks around the entire barn, peering behind every stack of boxes, calling again, more quietly. Her voice sounds muffled in the confined space. No answer. They return to the car. Mia walks slowly, dragging her feet. She's no longer running. Her shoulders are slumped, not from the cold, but from something heavy. She sits in the back seat and looks out the window, turned away. Her face becomes very calm, too calm for a child. Minju sits down next to him. He sees her clenching her fists in her lap to keep them from shaking. He sees her swallow slightly, taking a deep breath. Her eyes become bright, but she blinks hard, and no tears come. She simply remains silent, curled into a ball. The car starts moving. Khan, behind the wheel, is silent, looking at the road. We'll continue the search, Minju says. He says this not as a consolation, but as the next logical step. The contract is not fulfilled. The work is not finished. Mia nods without looking at him. She believes his words, but right now she's in a very difficult situation. She thinks about the puppy, alone, perhaps even more scared than she is. She thinks about how close they were. A clue found, a place found, and then again, nothing. An empty kennel. She wipes her face with the sleeve of her jacket, pretending to remove moisture, but her cheeks are dry. Minju watches her. He sees how she struggles to act like an adult. He's used to seeing all kinds of pain, but this, a quiet, controlled child's struggle with disappointment, seems different to him. It's not weakness. It's a stubborn strength that's losing. He understands such strengths. The car drives through the night streets. The streetlights reflect in the black puddles. Minju looks at his phone. The screen lights up with notifications of missed business calls. He ignores them. A direct search by his team yielded no results. The area was too large, the puppy was too small, and time was running out. A different approach was needed, one that was large-scale and systematic. He turns to Khan. not taking his eyes off the window. We need to notify everyone in the area, not just ours. Every store, every kiosk, every taxi driver at the parking lot, everyone who sees or hears anything on the streets during the day. Khan nods, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. He understands. This isn't just a search operation anymore. It's a mobilization of the information network. We'll make an announcement. Photo, description, nickname. We'll put a reward for information, Khan says, mentally formulating a plan. Please provide my personal number for verified information, Minju adds in an even tone. Khan pauses for a second. The boss's personal number? To find the dog? But he immediately suppresses any surprise. It's an order. Understood. Minju looks at Mia. Do you have a photo of him? Mia silently rummages through her old phone. She finds a photo and shows it to her. It's of herself, laughing, with a small brown puppy, with a white spot on its face, curled up in her lap. The photo is a little blurry, but the features are clear. Minju shows the phone to Han. He looks briefly and nods. That's enough. Then Minju dials the number himself. He calls the person in charge of contacts with small shopkeepers and services in this and neighboring areas. Listen, we need to spread the word. A dog is missing. A puppy, named Cloud, brown with a white spot on its muzzle. A substantial reward for useful information. For urgent messages, my direct number. Yes, do it quickly and quietly. He hangs up and makes a few more calls. Each time, briefly, clearly, without explanation. He deploys his network of contacts, his reputation, the entire mechanism that usually functions for other purposes. Now this mechanism will search for a lost puppy. Mia sits and listens to his even, businesslike voice. She doesn't fully understand the scale of what he's launching, but she senses a change. This isn't just a few men looking over fences anymore. This is something big and serious, like how they search for important people in the movies. And all this is for her little Cloud. Information begins to spread instantly. It's not flashy or loud. It simply seeps into every crevice of the neighborhood, like water. Within an hour, a card with a description and a poorly printed photo from Mia's old phone is lying on the counters of 10 small shops. It's magnetically attached to the cash register at a shoe repair shop. It's seen by the owner of a hardware store and a taxi driver waiting for orders at the parking lot. Word of mouth works reliably. People tell each other over the phone, "Hey, they're looking for a dog, a puppy. Did you see the ad?" In conversations, they mention not so much the reward as the fact that a certain person is behind it. This forces people to take the matter seriously. The next morning, before dawn, the notice appears on the bulletin boards outside apartment buildings. It's not posted en masse. It's placed selectively in key locations. The information reaches cleaners, street cleaners, postmen, anyone who's out early and might notice something. Everyone knows the number to call, but few call yet. People watch their step more closely, noticing every rustle in the alleys. The neighborhood, without realizing it, begins a silent search. After midnight, searching in the dark becomes pointless. Minju's car is parked again on a quiet street, not far from Mia's house. The girl sits in the back seat, wrapped in a thin car blanket Han found. She no longer cries or speaks. She simply sits, staring out the dark window, the occasional flash of headlights flitting past. Fatigue takes its toll. Her head begins to droop. First, she sits up abruptly, trying to stay awake. Then again. The third time, her eyelids slowly close. She falls asleep sitting up, her head finally falling onto the seat cushion. Her breathing becomes even and deep. She still clutches her old phone in her hand. Minju sits next to him. He's awake. He looks at the sleeping girl, then out the dark window. He thinks about the strangeness of this day. His mind, accustomed to analyzing deals, threats, and benefits, now churns through other facts. A crumpled dollar bill, a hopeful look, a tuft of fur on the fence, an empty doghouse. He's wasted the evening, canceled meetings, deployed his resources, all for the sake of a puppy he's never seen, at the request of a child he doesn't know. In his world, every action has a price and a purpose. The purpose here is clear: find the dog. But the cost? The time spent? The connections involved? It's nothing. The real cost, he feels, lies elsewhere, in the fact that he took that dollar. He gave his word, albeit a silent one, and that word, given to a child, proved more important than all the business agreements of the day. This thought seems to him not so much warm as fundamentally true. Like an axiom, he broke all his rules, but preserved the only one that mattered in this situation. The gray, rainy light of a new day awakens Mia. She wakes up confused, not immediately recognizing where she is. She sees Min-ju sitting in the same position as last night, staring at his phone. He looks as if he hasn't slept at all. Khan brings simple buns and 2 glasses of tea from a nearby cafe. Breakfast is served in silence. Ju's phone lies on the center console. It's silent. The clock shows 9 in the morning. The hope that flared the night after the operation was launched is slowly fading, giving way to a sober, bitter reality. The puppy might never be found. He might have wandered too far. Something might have happened to him. Mia understands this too. She quietly finishes her bun, barely tasting it. Suddenly, the phone vibrates. The sound is sharp in the quiet car. An unfamiliar number appears on the screen. Minju picks up the phone. His face is expressionless. Yes. He listens. Mia freezes, stopping chewing. She looks at him, trying to catch the slightest emotion. At first, his face remains impassive. Then his eyebrows draw together slightly, almost imperceptibly. Not in frown, aussi, but in an expression of concentrated attention. The address, he says briefly. Han is ready to write it down. Minju dictates the street and house number. The voice on the other end of the line calls out. This morning, when he opened it, he heard a rustling sound in the far corner where the empty boxes are stored. He remembered the ad and called. Someone's there. The car races through the wet morning streets, breaking all the rules of safe driving. They pull up to a large, fenced-in warehouse. An elderly man in work clothes is already waiting for them at the gate, along with another member of Minju's team, who arrived first to inspect the premises. In the farthest hangar, the guard says, pointing nervously. I didn't go in as I was told. They follow him along the slippery asphalt between the high walls of crates. The air smells of vegetables, earth, and dampness. The guard stops at the huge metal gates of one of the warehouses. One panel is slightly open. There, behind the mountain of empty boxes, he whispers. Han and the other man enter first, assessing the situation. Minju and Mia follow them. Inside, the hangar is dimly lit, smelling of dust and wood. In the far corner, where barely any light from the street reaches, a pyramid of empty wooden crates is stacked. And then they hear it, a very quiet, plaintive sound. Not a bark, not a whine, but a quiet, intermittent whine, full of fear and fatigue. Mia can't take it anymore. She slips past the adults. Cloud? Her voice trembles. The whining stops. Silence falls. Then there's a rustling sound. From beneath the very bottom drawer, through a narrow, dark crack, a small brown muzzle with a white spot appears. Its eyes are wide open with fear. Its fur is dirty, with blades of grass tangled in it. The puppy looks at Mia. He doesn't run out. He freezes, uncertain. Mia slowly, very slowly, kneels a few steps away from him. Cloud, it's me, she says softly, holding out her hand. It's okay. I'm here! The puppy whines again, this time sounding like a question. He takes one hesitant step out of hiding, then another. He recognizes the voice. He recognizes her. He clumsily runs up to her and nuzzles his wet nose into her outstretched palm. Mia carefully, as if afraid to scare him, wraps both arms around him and hugs him. The puppy trembles but doesn't break free. He licks her fingers, squealing softly. She presses him against her jacket, covering him with her body, and closes her eyes. Her shoulders shake slightly, but this time not from the cold or from tears, but from an overwhelming relief. She has found him. They stand in the middle of a warehouse yard under a low gray sky. The rain has almost stopped, leaving only a light, almost weightless drizzle. But for Mia and Cloud, there's no rain, no cold, no strangers. Mia squats down, still holding the puppy tightly. She doesn't cry loudly. She simply holds him close, burying her nose in his wet fur, her shoulders shaking slightly with suppressed sobs of relief. Cloud trembles at first, curled up in her arms. Then his trembling gradually subsides. He begins to lick her chin, her cheek, his small tail making its first hesitant wags. She lets him go, but only to examine him. Her fingers carefully probe his paws, his sides, his head. You're all right, she whispers, and it sounds like a prayer. You're all right, silly. I was so scared. She sits down right on the wet asphalt, ignoring the mud, and lays the puppy on her lap. Cloud finally seems to understand that he is safe. He stops licking her and simply rests his head on her hand, sighing heavily. His eyes close. He is exhausted from fear, the cold, and the long night alone. Mia strokes his head and back, brushing away dried blades of grass with her fingers. She murmurs something softly to him, smiling through the drops, whether rain or tears, that remain on her eyelashes. She hugs him again, less impulsively this time, but softly, rocking him like a child. Her face is filled with such unconditional, absolute joy that it seems almost luminous even on this cloudy day. Minju stands a few meters away. His men, Han and another man, step aside, watching the perimeter, giving them space. Those same big brown eyes that looked at him with hope yesterday, now they shine. There are no tears in them, only pure, unbridled happiness. It is so bright and sincere that it seems almost tangible. She looks at her puppy, and her whole world in that moment is perfect and complete. Ju watches this scene, and a quiet but fundamental shift occurs within him. He's used to seeing results, the results of negotiations, the results of actions, the results of processes. Before him now is the result. The puppy has been found. The contract has been fulfilled. The goal has been achieved. But this isn't the kind of goal that brings the sense of accomplishment that comes from winning a deal or solving a problem. It's something else. He looks into those happy child's eyes and understands that he was the cause of this light. Not fear, not power, not money, but the simple fulfillment of a promise made for a crumpled dollar that led to this. In his strictly ordered universe, where everything has a price and a calculation, a new, unaccounted parameter appears. A feeling that cannot be measured, but which is now an undeniable fact, as real as the wet asphalt beneath his feet. He did it, and this "it" turned out to be more important than he could have imagined. Mia finally gets up. She holds Cloud in her arms, hugging him to her chest. The puppy is almost asleep, lulled by the warmth and sense of security. She approaches Minju. Her steps are now light, almost bouncy. She stops in front of him and looks up. Her face is serious, but radiant. "Thank you," she says clearly and loudly. "Thank you very, very much." She pauses for a second, searching for the most important words she knows. "You're a true hero. You found him when I no longer believed it." She pronounces the word hero without a shadow of a doubt. For her, it's not an exaggeration, but a statement of fact. A hero is someone who comes to the rescue when all seems lost and accomplishes the impossible. And that's exactly what he did. Then, still holding the puppy, she begins rummaging through her jacket pocket with one hand. She pulls out another crumpled dollar bill, her last, spare one. "Here, this is for your work, the promised payment," she says, holding out the bill again. She remembers the terms of their deal. Minju looks at the second dollar, then at her face. He slowly shakes his head. "No," he says quietly but firmly. "Payment has already been received." He pauses, looking at the sleeping puppy, then meets her gaze again. "Thank you, that's enough." He doesn't smile. His face remains serious. But something new appears in his eyes, usually so cold and assessing. Something like quiet, silent respect. Not for himself, but for her stubbornness, for her faith, for this strange, pure strength that made him change his entire day. Ju looks at the second dollar bill in Mia's outstretched hand. He doesn't take it. Instead, his gloved hand reaches into the inside pocket of his coat. He pulls out that very same dollar bill, the one that was wet and crumpled. Now the paper is dry, but still soft, with crisp fold lines. He holds the bill between his index and middle fingers. Then he carefully takes the second, fresh dollar from Mia's hand. He folds them together, lining up the edges. 2 green rectangular bills, one old and one new. "Our agreement was for $1, he says calmly, looking at her. $1 for your help. I have it." He hands her both dollars, stacked in a pile, but doesn't release them immediately. "Your gratitude is an additional payment, not stipulated by the terms. It's more valuable. Therefore, I'm returning your down payment." He places both dollars in her free hand, the one not holding the puppy. His movements are precise and final. The job is closed, the balance is maintained. Mia looks at the dollars in her hand, then at him. She doesn't fully understand this adult logic with agreements and balances, but she gets the gist. He doesn't want her money. He thinks a thank you is enough. For her, a child from a poor family, this is surprising. Money is always important, but he, so self-important and serious, says that some things are more important. She slowly puts the bills in her pocket, still holding Cloud. "Okay," she says, accepting his rules. "Thank you." Ju's car pulls up to a nondescript 5-story building on the outskirts of the neighborhood. Mia lives there with her grandmother. Ju gets out with her. He looks at the shabby entrance, the rickety swing in the yard. Mia turns to him, clutching the sleeping puppy. She looks a little confused. The fairy tale is over, and now it's back to normal life. Lessons, caring for grandma, and the fear that Cloud might get lost again, and she'll have no one to turn to. Minju sees the shadow on her face. He takes out his phone again. He taps it a few times, then shows her the screen. A new contact is displayed. The name is a single word, Min. "This is my personal number," he says, "for emergencies only. If I need help again. If something happens to him," he nods at the puppy, "or to you, or to your grandmother. Not for talking. For business." He says this sternly, like an instruction, but the meaning is clear. He's leaving her a channel of communication, not out of politeness, but as a real tool. "Remember it," he adds, "or write it down in your phone." Mia nods seriously. She understands the importance of this moment. These aren't just numbers, they're a key. She stares at the screen, repeating the numbers under her breath. Then she takes out her old phone and, with a serious expression, clutching the puppy under her arm, enters the number, checking the screen. She names the new contact Mr. Min. "Got it," she says, finishing. "Only for the very important." He nods, satisfied. An unspoken agreement has been struck between them. He doesn't become her friend or guardian. He becomes the guarantor of security in her small world, a quiet, invisible union. "Go," he says. Grandma's worried. A few days later, Minju is driving through the same neighborhood again. Things are going as usual. But now, without meaning to, his gaze catches on other details. He drives past that same playground and her house. Previously, he'd seen just a patch of land with metal structures. Now he notices that one swing's chain is broken and hanging at an angle. He sees that the sandbox isn't filled with sand, but with shards of glass and debris. He sees two toddlers trying to swing on the one remaining swing, while their mother stands nearby, looking tiredly at her phone. His car stops at a traffic light next to a small park where elderly people often gather. It used to be just a dot on the map. Now he sees that the only bench is broken, and the elderly are sitting on old boxes or simply on the curb. He sees one of them rise unsteadily, leaning on a cane. He passes the small shop where Mia bought bread. He notices the owner, the same one who posted the puppy flyer, emerge and look anxiously at a group of teenagers loudly discussing something at his door. Previously, Minju would have noticed only the teenagers themselves, assessing them as a potential problem or a resource. Now he sees fear in the older man's eyes. These images don't evoke a sudden surge of pity or a desire to become a philanthropist. They simply register as data, as flaws in a system for which he is, by and large, responsible. This neighborhood brought him income, but it was simply territory. Now, after walking with Mia, after searching every alley, he sees that this is not territory. This is a place where people live, where children play on broken swings, where old people have nowhere to sit, where small shops fear hooligans. He doesn't say it out loud. He simply looks out of the window, his face impassive. But in his head, where schemes of control and profit have always been built, a new category of analysis is quietly forming: problems that interfere with life. And if they interfere with life here, then ultimately, they interfere with his business. A quiet neighborhood is a stable neighborhood. It's still a cold calculation, but the starting point for this calculation is now different. Swing set with sturdy chains and a plastic seat appears on the playground near Mia's house. The old broken one is hauled away overnight. The sandbox is cleared of debris and glass and filled with fresh, clean sand. The work is carried out by a team of workers from another part of the city. They don't answer questions, simply do their job and leave. Local residents see the results in the morning, but no one knows who organized it. A few days later, 3 new sturdy wooden benches are installed in the park where the elderly used to gather. They are delivered and secured to concrete foundations early in the morning, while the streets are still sparsely populated. Now the elderly have a place to sit, chat, and bask in the sun. They whisper among themselves, wondering if the district mayor has finally shown concern, but there are no official signs on the benches. The owner of a small shop notices that the group of teenagers who had been harassing him no longer shows up at his door. They simply vanished from the neighborhood, leaving no trace. Sometime later, he receives a businesslike offer to install a new, more reliable alarm system for a nominal fee from a certain security company. He agrees, sensing that this help is connected to the day he posted the flyer for the dog. All these events don't seem connected. They seem like random bursts of improvement, but those who pay attention begin to notice a strange pattern. Problems that have long irritated people are beginning to resolve themselves, quietly and effectively. At first, conversations are whispered. Then they become louder. People notice the changes and try to understand their source. Women at the playground are talking among themselves while their children are swinging on a new swing. I heard it was that Minju from the business association who helped. How unexpected! The incredulous response is, why would he suddenly need that? But the tone is no longer as fearful as it used to be when his name was mentioned. It reveals bewilderment and a glimmer of respect. The owners of small shops and cafes discuss improvements over morning coffee. Vandals damaged my sign. They came the next day and fixed it. Didn't even take money. They said it was from the association. They nod, looking at each other knowingly. They start calling him not that formidable Min or the boss, but Min say, with an honorific suffix. The difference is subtle, but important. Even his own men notice the change. When Han delivers another assignment, related to helping the local soup kitchen with repairs, he catches the glances of his subordinates. These glances no longer reflect the simple fear of the past. There's bewilderment, but also a budding pride. They still fear his wrath, but now they're beginning to respect him not only for his strength and power, but also for these strange, incomprehensible, yet right actions. Fear of him is now mixed with genuine respect. People on the street still avoid him, but now, when they meet his gaze, they not only quickly look away, but sometimes nod almost imperceptibly, expressing quiet gratitude. Min Ju stands by the large window of his top-floor office. The evening city spreads out beyond. Myriad lights, the strict lines of the streets, the dark rectangles of rooftops. He holds that very first dollar bill in his hand. The paper has completely dried and become stiff, but the fold lines are now etched into it forever. He doesn't look at the dollar bill. He looks out the window, at the neighborhood, which he now sees in a new way. He sees more than just a territory on a map. He sees a light in the window of that very same grocery store where rotten apples once lay. He knows that there are now benches in the park below. He knows that on one of the roofs in the distance, a leak in the apartment of a lonely pensioner was repaired yesterday. It was one of the minor matters, Khan reported. His world hasn't changed radically. It's still as strict, calculating, and sometimes ruthless. The rules of the game remain the same. But within this game, a new, quiet goal has emerged. Maintaining order now encompasses not only security and control, but also some semblance of functionality, so that the swings don't break, so that the elderly have a place to rest, so that the small shops aren't afraid. It's still logic. A healthy body functions better, but the source of this logic is no longer simply cold calculation. He turns the dollar bill over in his fingers. This piece of paper is worthless in his world, but it has become a symbol of the most unexpected contract of his life. A contract that began with hope in a child's eyes and ended with something more than a found dog. He puts the dollar back in the top drawer of his desk, next to his important documents, not as a talisman, not as a memento, but as a document. A reminder of a simple fact. Sometimes the most important transactions are made not on paper, but in a silent exchange. A dollar for hope, an action for gratitude. And this transaction can change everything without changing a single rule. He turns away from the window. Papers await on the desk, and the phone will soon ring with a new business request. He is Minju again, a man respected and feared. But deep down, where the most important decisions are made, now dwells a quiet knowledge, once brought to him on the wet palm of a little girl. The knowledge that true strength can be manifested not only in the ability to take, but also in the ability to give back. And sometimes, all it takes is a dollar. 3 months passed. The cold rain gave way to frosty but clear winter air. Life in the neighborhood continued as before, but subtle, persistent threads of change began to appear. Mia's morning starts early. She helps her grandmother lay out the work she brought home. Stacks of trousers that need hemming. Cloud, now plumper and with a shiny coat, swirls at her feet, chasing a ray of sunlight from the window. The puppy has become more confident, but still dislikes loud noises. During thunderstorms, he hides under Mia's bed, and she sits with him until the thunder subsides. After school, Mia takes Cloudy for a walk. She still wanders the same alleys, but now she does so without fear. She knows there's a number in the pocket of her old phone, under the name Mr. Min. She's never called it, but its very presence is like a solid wall behind her. Once a large teenager who tried to tease her dog was suddenly, gently but firmly, led away by 2 men in ordinary clothes, seemingly out of nowhere. They said nothing to her, simply nodded and disappeared. Mia understood. She simply continued walking. Her grandmother notices the changes. Suddenly, the lights in their building were fixed on every floor. The strange groups that sometimes gathered in the courtyard disappeared. And one day, when her grandmother's old joints were really hurting and Mia was at school, a car pulled up to the house. A woman got out with a medical kit, introducing herself as a nurse from the district clinic on call from social services. She gave her grandmother an injection, left some ointment, and drove away, refusing her money. The grandmother understands everything. She doesn't ask her granddaughter anything. Sometimes, before bed, she simply strokes her head and says, "Take care of him, whoever he is." Mia throws it away without asking who. Ju's office is still stern and quiet. He's talking to a contractor seeking permission to build a small business center on the outskirts of the district. Previously, the conversation would have been brief. Terms, interest rate, approval or denial. Now Minju listens, then asks a question that stumps the contractor. "What are your plans for parking for the neighboring residents? Their yard is already overcrowded." The contractor starts talking about renting spaces in the neighboring garage. Minju listens silently, then says, "That's not enough. You'll offer the residents 20 guaranteed spaces at a fixed low price and pay for the renovation of the playground across the street. Without that, there's no conversation." The contractor tries to argue that this will increase costs. Minju looks at him with the same level, impenetrable gaze. This isn't a discussion. It's a condition. A stable neighborhood is a good neighborhood for business. Restless residents are a problem for everyone. You're not just building a downtown. You're integrating into a system. The system must remain balanced. This is a new language. A language that combines iron will with an unexpected concern for balance. The contractor, accustomed to brutal pressure or outright racketeering, is confused. But he understands that this is not a request, but a new set of rules. And these rules, oddly enough, have a logic. He agrees. The deal is done. Han, present at the meeting, later reports on other matters. One of their nightclubs has received noise complaints. Previously, the response was simple, pressuring the complainants. Now Minju gives the order. Install additional noise. Soundproofing from the residential side. And hire someone to come out in the evenings and make sure the guests don't make noise outside. At your own expense. Khan simply blurts out, "Got it." He's already used to it. The new approach saves time and resources on long conflicts. It's effective and, oddly enough, calmer. One evening, as Minju is reviewing his reports, a text message arrives on his personal phone. Not a call, a text message. Brief, without a greeting. "Cloud, everything's fine. I got an A in math. Thank you." He looks at the number. It's Mia. He realizes it's not a case. It's a report. A report that her world is in order, and perhaps a quiet attempt to say that she remembers. He doesn't answer. He simply saves the number in his phone under the name M. He almost smiles, but it's just a slight change in the corners of his eyes that no one sees. The winter has been harsh. One evening, a heavy snowfall begins, turning to freezing rain. The city is gridlocked, and power lines in the older neighborhoods give out. In one of the buildings, the very 5-story one where Mia lives, the lights go out and the heating shuts off. Mia's grandmother, who has sore joints, is especially sensitive to the cold. Mia lights the candles they always keep around in case of power outages. She wraps her grandmother in a blanket and sits next to her, hugging her in the cloud. But the cold quickly penetrates the apartment. Grandma begins to cough violently. Mia looks at her phone. Is this an emergency with a threat? There's no obvious danger. But Grandma is ill, and there's no help. Weighing everything in her childish, but now more mature head, she types a text message to the only number. "There's no power or heat in our house. Grandma is very cold, she's coughing. Sorry to bother you." Minju receives a message during a meeting. He reads it, his expression unchanging. He apologizes and leaves the office. 2 minutes later, he's already giving orders to Han, who's on the other side of town. House on Seongnam Street, 14. Total blackout. We need a mobile generator, heaters, hot food, and a doctor. To apartment 17. Quickly. Han doesn't ask for details. He's already on the move. The system, built for other purposes, instantly switches over. Han has contacts. 40 minutes later, an SUV pulls up to Mia's house with a generator on a trailer. Another car brings 2 powerful oil heaters, thermoses of soup and hot tea, and the same doctor from earlier. They work quickly and quietly. They turn on a generator in the courtyard and run a cable directly into their apartment through the window. The connected heaters begin to emit heat. The doctor examines the grandmother. gives her an injection, and leaves medication. Mia stands and watches silently. She feels awkward about the scale of things, but she sees her grandmother's cheeks gradually turning pink, her breathing becoming more even. Khan, who is personally supervising the process, approaches Mia. Everything will be fine. The generator will work until the lights come back on. These people will be on duty downstairs. If anything happens, they'll be right here. He doesn't say who it's from. No need. Once everything is set up, the team quietly leaves, leaving one man in the yard next to a running generator. An hour later, the lights come on in the house. Minju receives a short report from Han. The situation has stabilized. Grandma is sleeping. The girl is fine. And another text from Mia. Thank you. The lights are on. Grandma is sleeping. We're all warm. He doesn't answer again. But this time, he cancels his next call and spends 5 minutes simply looking out the window at the falling snow. He's not thinking about gratitude. He's thinking about efficiency. The system worked flawlessly, and it protected what he suddenly realized was part of the balance of this neighborhood. A fragile but crucial part. Spring is coming. The snow melts, revealing last year's grass and clean, swept asphalt. One sunny day, Mia, with Cloud on a leash, is walking near that same quiet cafe. She approaches the door, hesitates a bit, then goes inside. The same elderly owner recognizes her. He smiles. Coco? He asks. Mia nods, and she sits down at the same table in the corner. When the host brings a large mug of marshmallows, she places on the tray, not money, but a small envelope, neatly folded from white paper. For Mr. Min, when he's here, she says quietly. This is very important. The owner nods understandingly, takes the envelope and puts it under the counter. That evening, Minju stops at the cafe for his usual coffee. The owner silently hands him the coffee and an envelope. From a girl, is all he says. Ju sits down at his table. He opens the envelope. There's no letter inside. There's a dollar bill, but not an old, crumpled one. It's a new, crisp dollar bill, and attached to it with a paperclip is a child's colorful hand-drawn postcard. The card depicts a large birch tree, more like a cloud with sticks. Beneath it, a girl with a dog, and next to it, the tall silhouette of a man in a coat. The sun shines down on all three. At the bottom, in block letters, is written, Thank you, from Mia and the Cloud. Minju looks at the drawing, then at the new dollar. The first dollar was payment for the work. This one is different. It's not payment, not repayment of a debt. It's a gift, a sign that the Quiet Alliance is working, that a new, very simple value has emerged in his harsh, pragmatic universe. Gratitude that demands nothing in return except the continuation of this silent agreement. He puts the dollar and the postcard in the same desk drawer, next to the first. Now there are two. He finishes his coffee and goes outside. The evening air already smells of spring. He gets into the car and, before giving the command to drive, glances for a second at the lighted window of his office upstairs. There, in the desk drawer, are $2. One bought him an unexpected change. The second confirms that this change was the right one. He turns away. The car starts moving, dissolving in a stream of lights. The story is not over. It has simply become part of the landscape, silent but unshakable, like new asphalt after winter.